Hi and welcome back to another video. It's the weekend and that signals the end of another week racing in Le Mans Ultimate. However, it's the 26th of January 2025 and this weekend marks the end of the first season of the Le Mans Online Championship. That be the LMGT3 Fixed Series, the LMGT3 Trophy Series, the Le Mans Endurance Series or the multi-class season. It has been 6 weeks of thrills, spills, chaos and mayhem, but throughout it has been an enjoyable experience, probably a bit of a frustrating experience for some people. It's definitely been an emotional experience for me. It's also been a bit of a body bruising experience, but overall I have to say it has been a satisfying experience and most importantly a learning experience. One I hope will give me a number of lessons I can take into Season 2. Before I get started, like always, please can I ask you to jump into the comment section. Let me know if you have raced in any of the series this season. How have they been for you? What did you love? What did you hate? What would you like to see done differently in Season 2? Will you change your approach to Season 2? Will you enter into different series? Did you sit out Season 1 waiting to see what the writing on the wall would say? Jump into the comments, let me know. And of course, any likes, shares, subscriptions are more than appreciated. Me, I started in the LMGT3 Fixed Series with the schedule seeing us go to Circuit of Americas in round 1, followed by Spa-Francorchamps, Imola in round 3, Sebring in round 4, Podium in round 5, and then rounding out the season at Le Mans. I'm not going to focus too much on the Fixed Series in this video. I had some fun. I had a lot of fun actually racing all 6 rounds, but it was in the Trophy Series where I made the most ground, the most development and had the best racing. Round 1 saw us at Interlagos, with round 2 at Fuji, my nemesis, with round 3 taking us to Bahrain, followed by Circuit of Americas in round 4, Sebring, one of my favourite tracks, in round 5, and then again we rounded out the season at Le Mans, round 6. I also thought that I would do the Le Mans Endurance Series. I entered into round 1, failed to finish any of the 2 races I entered into, and quickly decided, no, I'm going to leave this series alone, maybe come back to it in Season 2. Wanted to enter the multi-class Masters because it was going to go to Spa, Circuit of Americas, Monza, Interlagos, Imola and Le Mans, and we would have multi-class racing. But a Monday-Thursday schedule really didn't work for me at the back end of 2024. Across the 3 series, I would do 26 races, 0 wins, 0 podiums. I got 4 top 5s though, and somehow I managed to lead 9 laps. Nothing when you consider I did 674 laps across the 6 weeks. There you see the 2 DNFs, those were both Le Mans races I tried to do in the Le Mans Endurance Series. But the less said about that, the better. The season for the Trophy Series started off at Sao Paulo, Brazil, and I had committed to run all series in the McLaren 720S LMGT3. The McLaren 720S was a new car to me in Le Mans Ultimate. Sao Paulo, Brazil is a track we all know and love. Therefore, optimistic and hopeful that I could get up to speed quite quickly and be competitive. That delusion lasted no longer than the first qualifying session. As I would learn across the 6 weeks, everybody in my split, whether it was split 1 or split 2, were uber competitive and so much more comfortable racing GT3s than I was. In fact, by the time I took lap 1 of race 1, I was still using the baseline setup with a few tweaks. Hangover from racing all of the fixed races, I thought familiarity would give me comfort and allow me to focus on the racing. I'm quite sure everyone else in the race had realised they needed to be a little bit more competitive, so had pushed the edge a little bit on what they were running for setups. However, the other drivers weren't my biggest problem in race 1. It was the fact we were still at that time getting those random crazy penalties on the start process. So race 1 was a damp squib. I already had a drive-through penalty that I had to serve within the first 3 laps. It meant that all strategies, all tactics I thought I was going to deploy in the race went out the window. My immediate focus was, do I take the penalty on the first lap, second lap or third? And it all depended on what the other cars around me did on the first lap. Was it a clean start? Did I make up any positions? Did I drop back? Did I have damage? And then of course, did any of the cars ahead of me also have the penalty? Did any of the cars behind me have the penalty? And if so, how many? And the thing about Sao Paulo, Brazil, is the run into the pit lane is aggressive. You can take an immense amount of speed if you're willing to throw caution to the wind and absolutely nail the pit entry. So if other cars in front were also taking their penalties, then obviously the best thing to do for me would be to stay out so that they didn't slow me down when I was trying to nail that in lap. However, who knew what was going to happen? Distracted by the Ferrari in front of me, the McLaren to my right, I felt boxed in, and at the last moment I decided not to try and pit, especially because the Ferrari was braking much earlier than I would. I went on, did the second lap, pitted then, and as I crossed the start finish line, I was amazed to see that about 4 or 5 other cars behind me also had to take a penalty. As I said, my race was ultimately over lap 1 because of that penalty. So I just finished, took the points, and then rolled on to round 2, Fuji. Now, Fuji has been a track that has been my nemesis throughout my career, online career in sim racing. No matter the sim title, no matter the race, I have sucked here. So when I took to the grid in the trophy series, I expected to qualify at the back. I just hoped I wouldn't fall off the back of the grid. And it was again another fraught, tense, exciting race start with everybody fighting for position. At this point of the season, I'd done probably 4 or 5 races now in the LMGT3 category, open setups, but I was still basing my setup off the baseline setup with just a few tweaks to my liking. And it's probably one of the reasons why I was so far off the pace. I was hoping I'd be able to hang on to the back of the pack and maybe pick up some pieces by the time we tripped over each other through Sector 3. But by the time we got to the end of lap 1, the beginning of lap 2, halfway through lap 2, I was already falling off the back of the pack and was just thinking, how can I limit the embarrassment? How can I at least get to the end of the race, maybe end a clean race, maybe pick up a few positions for people who DNF'd, and then get out of Fuji, get out of Japan and roll on into week 3. Might sound a bit melodramatic, and I don't know what it's like for everybody else, but I truly detest this track, and it's because I suck here. I just cannot get the right rhythm out of Sector 3 with all of the switchbacks, with all of the traction zones. I just haven't found a way to nail it yet, and I'm hoping that if, and I'm going to say if, again, I can get on top of the car and I can extract some performance out of the setup and then become more comfortable with it, that perhaps I will find my rhythm around this circuit. But again, I did 3 races this week. I did manage to pick up some points, but I can't say that I was impressed or satisfied with any of my performances. I really sucked at this track, and everybody else seemed to feel so much more comfortable. Let me tell you, when I say I was so glad that the series took us to Bahrain in week 3, I cannot overstate how happy I was to be turning up at this circuit. Because although, again, my times were never going to touch the leaders, it was a track where I at least felt comfortable, had a little bit more confidence in the car, and I loved the rhythm of Bahrain. So much so that I was still running that baseline setup with a few tweaks because I found my time through being familiar with the track and actually extracting performance. You know, that whole thing of you have to improve your performance before you go and search for the final attempt in the setups. At Bahrain, that was most definitely me. I actually felt like I could attack the track and that I could actually race the competitors. I still, as you can see, was starting at the back of the grid in all of my races because, again, everybody else was just that much more talented. But I could find that I was comfortable and confident to lean on the brakes and to lean on the car and go racing. So much so that by the time we got 2/3 of the way through the lap, that front left tyre was dead. Speaking of dead, so were my hopes and ambitions for getting a good result out of this race, because as you can see, because of cars not managing to get off the line on the start or maintaining a constant pace, that goddamn frustrating start procedure caught me out again, and as you can see, I had a drive-through penalty. Thing was, this time I knew long before I got to the start finish line that I was going to get the penalty, because as you saw, one of the cars up ahead just didn't get off the line, which meant that everybody behind had to speed to catch up and get into position of where they should have been on the start. By the time we did that, the green came to hold the pace position and we were all going above the 60 kilometers per hour. And you're going to see at the end of what was still an exciting opening lap with door banging, wheel-to-wheel racing, that more than 9 cars had to take a drive-through penalty in this race. Whilst I didn't know that it was going to be 9 cars or more, I did know that I wasn't the only person that got caught out. I knew there were going to be at least 3 or 4 other cars that, again, we're going to have to decide, do they take the drive-through straight away, or do they go through lap 1, lap 2 and try and get some track position? And as you can see, everybody was squabbling for that track position on lap 1. It really was a case of, yeah, we might have 60 minutes in this race, but if we don't get up the road now, we're going to spend those 60 minutes just fighting over the minor placing. So again, I had that dilemma. Do I take the drive-through now, or do I try and get up the road a little bit and do the undercut? But as I came round the final corner, I saw at least 5 cars ahead of me take to pit lane, and that road just opened up. The decision was clear. Take the next lap or 2 and see if I could get some element of pace, get maybe a second or 2 on all of the cars that had to take a more conservative entry into the pit lane than I would, so that damage limitation might help me make up 5 or 6 places by the end of the race. And that's exactly what happened. So again, whilst not the greatest of results, it at least was a damage limitation exercise, and I came away from Bahrain for a much better result than I was anticipating at the start of the week. But my confidence in the series was increasing. I was getting a little bit more competitive and a little bit more, I don't know, acclimatized to the McLaren 720S. I was still running that baseline setup with a few tweaks, and it was time to make a few more radical changes as we went to Circuit of the Americas, Austin, Texas for round 4. Circuit of the Americas is one of those tracks where I used to absolutely hate racing it, but that's when I was back on a single screen and couldn't see through any of the 90 or more degree corners that Circuit of the Americas is absolutely littered with. But from the moment I got my first VR headset and was able to look through all of the apexes, all of a sudden I fell in love with the track because it has such a nice rhythm. It is so technical, and it rewards you for accurate placement of the car, attention to managing the weight transfer of your vehicle, the smooth application of the throttle, and the rhythm that you need to knit together each corner into a sequence of flowing switchbacks. It's such a rewarding experience when you cross the start-finish line and know that you carried momentum through sector 1 onto the back straight, and then through again that technical sector 3, especially the penultimate turn and the final turn, where you have to place the car to within an inch of the apex to avoid either the off track or clipping that huge curve that wants to send your car skittering off the track. To do all of that and see the lap time reward you is such a satisfying feeling. And then you have to add into that fighting tooth and nail, doors to door, wheel arch to wheel arch, with all of the other cars on track who are equally scrabbling to try and get the perfect lap together and to make up positions. As I said, Circuit of the Americas was a track that I hated before, and it's now one that I absolutely love. I was so glad to see it on the series schedule, and I was so glad to see that of the 3 races that I did, they were some of the best races, the best race performances I had put in throughout the trophy series thus far. In fact, by the time we got to round 5 at Circuit of the Americas, I had got to the point where I was a little bit fed up of being bullied on track because of my vulnerability that I was projecting out to everybody else, because I was a little insecure in myself in the car. Getting to Circuit of the Americas, being bold with my setup, meant I was a little bit more emboldened with my racing. So comfortable and confident was I with the car on the brakes and my ability to get it stopped, hold the apex and make the corner, that when it came to turn 1 at Circuit of Americas, I was more than happy to take my unconventional line and diamond the corner, braking at the same braking point as everybody else, but taking probably 5 to 10 meters off my stopping distance. But apologies to anybody who I might have scared the quote-unquote shit out of. but that was some of the best racing I had, some of the most aggressive racing I've ever done, and probably one of the best weeks that I had in the Trophy Series Season 1. One of the best, but most definitely not the best, because round 5 saw us take to Sebring International Raceway, one of my favourite tracks in sim racing. I don't know why, because this bumpy Florida circuit is one of the most challenging circuits to race on, especially multi-class. However, for some reason, the rhythm around the track has just always seemed natural to me. Again, on the back of the crest of a wave of confidence I took from round 4 Circuit of Americas, I turned up at Sebring determined to race a little bit more aggressively, to be much more confident in myself and in the car, and to try and extract a bit more performance, a bit more track time. Basically, I wanted to start closer to the front of the grid. But what I wanted and what I got aren't necessarily the same thing, because again, everybody else was just that much more competitive. I found myself 2+ seconds off the pace. Again, the story of my season, something I really need to address in Season 2. What Sebring also brought was inclement weather. It was the first week on the calendar where we had rain, and that I knew was another opportunity to maybe be a little bit more cute, a little bit more tactical, a little bit more careful in how I race, but maybe also, oh my god, I forgot that moment, a little bit more fortunate than others when it came to getting to the end of the race, where we knew that the track conditions were going to be changeable and that there was going to be a moment in time we had to decide, do we or do we not take to wet tyres, and do we or do we not revert back to racing slicks? So whilst I was extremely happy with my pace wasn't good enough. Again, especially in qualifying, I just could not extract the lap on the cold tyres on the damp track. However, when you see what happened at turn 5 on lap 1, I was lucky to finish the race. So the points I picked up in week 5 at Sebring were definitely many more points than I possibly could have been leaving with if I hadn't dodged that bullet and managed to close out the race and finish in the top 10 position, paying out a handsome and rewarding number of points. In fact, the more I think about it, the happier I am with how week 5 went and how I was starting to feel a little bit more comfortable in the series, getting to know some of the other drivers on track, getting familiar with how they race, how I could race against them, and building up some nice and healthy on-track camaraderie and of course some on-track rivalry. That's what we took into week 6 at Le Mans. And I'm going to have to just confess, I walked into week 6 with nothing but anxiety and trepidation. Whether it was in the fixed series, the daily races, whether it was my abortive attempt in the Le Mans Endurance series, or the first race that I did in the Trophy series, I just was absolutely terrible at Le Mans. I was 5, sometimes 6 seconds off the pace of the absolute fastest drivers. Now I know I would be happy to be 1 second off, maybe 1.5 seconds at a normal track with a normal distance. But at Le Mans, where that distance is double, I could accept being 2.5, maybe even 3 seconds off the absolute aliens. But 5? 6 seconds? Come on. There were a number of things contributing to that. One, I just couldn't get comfortable and confident in the lap. It didn't matter what I did, because the weather conditions were cold, the track was either down at 8 degrees or it was damp or it was going to rain. Whatever it was, I just didn't feel comfortable, whether that was through Tete Rouge, whether that was through the PlayStation and Michelin chicanes. Most definitely I was comfortable through Mulsanne Corner, but Indianapolis, the Porsche Cups, you name it, pretty much everywhere on the damn track, I had moments where I had a crisis of confidence. I first started racing at Le Mans in Le Mans Ultimate in the LMGT3s. I thought, I know how I'm going to approach any of the big stopping zones. I'm going to really lean on the ABS. I'm going to go really deep into the corner. But I'd go in so deep, I'd scrub off so much speed, I'd carry such a little amount of momentum through the apex that I'd get off the corner slow as well. So instead of being slow in, fast out, I'd be slow in, slow through and slow out, and it would just be an exponential lack of speed that I took around the lap. It was just embarrassing. By the time the trophy series arrived in week 6, I'd convinced myself to change my approach to brake sooner, to brake lighter, pretty much the way I've always braked in sim racing. I usually brake lighter, carry more speed through the apex, but I deliberately put even more onus on that at Le Mans, and it just meant that into every stopping zone, every car behind me made up like 50 meters on me. It again was embarrassing. And to punctuate the point, all the way through the season, all the way through the series, whether it was the fixed series or the championship series, the same drivers that I would look out for on the time standings or in the race results, the same drivers where I knew I was within half a second of them at every single track, were like a second or 2 seconds faster than me around the Cirque de la Sarthe. Again, can you spell embarrassing? It was frustrating. It was just absolutely demoralizing. So much so that by the time race 2 of week 6 came at Le Mans, I just made the decision I need to take this really passive, conservative setup that I've been using all season, well, approach to setups I should say, which is a few tweaks, normal, usual tweaks I would make to the car from the baseline setup. It wasn't good enough. I had to finally bite the bullet and say, you know what, maybe I'm maximizing all that I can do, all that I can get out of the track, and I have to get out of that comfort zone and go a little bit more extreme with the setup and basically hacksaw that rear wing off. So I did. And you know when they say you should only make one change at a time, I didn't make one change at a time. I literally deleted my setup and started from scratch. Looked at the Coach Dave Academy setup, saw how much it was differing to what I was running, and I mean hugely. It was a completely different concept, a completely different philosophy, opposite ends of the preload scale. It was just a case of, you know what, just ignore what you've been doing for 5 weeks, well, pretty much what you've been doing ever since September, and just start from scratch. And it was hilarious. One of the things that I found in Le Mans Ultimate that I've loved is that no matter what car, no matter what track, as long as it's in a GT car that is, I can just get out and pound out the laps. Everything feels natural and I don't spin off, I complete the laps. It's just simple. Go out, do a recce, build up speed and start attacking the lap. That obviously didn't work when I tried the LMGT3s and the hypercars, because those things with whether it's the battery being at the 0 or 100%, it would do a 180, or the way that the LMP2s would do a 180. So that doesn't count. But in the GT cars, whether it was the GTEs or the LMGT3s when they came, you could pretty much just stomp on the brakes and you'd be fine. With my new setup, I was going off at Dunlop, I was going off at Tête Rouge, I was going off at the PlayStation Michelin chicanes, I was going off at Mulsanne, I was dying through Indianapolis. I took a wheel off the car at Arnage and I managed to take another wheel off going through the Forger curves. The car was that much more aggressively set up, but it was fast. Exaggeration, I kid you not, between race 1 and race 2, by completely and utterly changing the setup, going more in the Coach Dave direction, I took 2 seconds off my lap time and I got comfortable with it. I was so much more confident on track in the race that by the time I did the second race of the week, rather than qualifying in maybe the bottom half or maybe the last 5, 6, maybe the last 10 cars on a 35 car grid, for the penultimate and final race of the series, I was knocking on the top 10 in qualifying. That was unbelievable because I had never managed to extract a time like that out of the car, especially in qualifying, especially on a cold track, especially at Le Mans. And instead of driving the race, I won't say racing the race, because in race 1 and in the fixed series races, I was just trying to get to the checkered flag without embarrassing myself. For race 2 and race 3, I was looking forward. I was trying to figure out how many positions I could make up on the track or in the pit lane, and whether I could get a top 10 finish in either of those races. And I managed to get top 10 finishes. I think it was in both, but I managed to finish the season finished the series with an epiphany moment that made me feel Season 2 could yield much better results. And surely, that's why we all do this, right? That's why we spend so much time locked away from family, friends, especially us in VR, locked away from the world, pounding out the laps, trying to find that 0.2, 0.1 or 2 seconds of lap time, trying to develop as racers, trying to improve our performance, basically just trying to enjoy what we do, have fun, and come away with a sense of satisfaction. When I look back at the championship standings for the fixed series, I'm happy that out of all the Brits, I managed to finish maybe third. Well, we'll see how the final race goes. But out of all of the 1,100 other drivers that signed up, I didn't really do well in the fixed series. It's the trophy series with, 665 other races where I feel I did the best, finishing in 15th place. Again, 200 points plus and maybe a different postcode away from the guys at the top of the standings. But again, when it comes to best of the Brits, I finished in third. And again, I take that. Third season in the championship series in Le Mans Ultimate. I'm just glad that I finished and I did well. And I'm even more satisfied with the racing that I had. Yes, there were definitely moments where the adrenaline hit, the red mist came down, and I was calling people all sorts of names under the sun when things went wrong. However, that's just racing. We all make mistakes, we all have accidents, they're all unintentional. Some of them really are moments where someone needed to just stop and think about what they were doing. However, it's usually not with malicious intent, so at the end of the season, we dust ourselves down, we stand up, we look forward, and we think, okay, what could I have done differently? What will I do differently when we turn around and come back in Season 2? And that is where I am, thinking about Season 2. So, for Season 2, I think I'm very likely to focus on the trophy series again. I want to make gains upon gains. I want to keep myself improving in the car. Even if they release new LMGT3s, and I am loving the idea of jumping into the Porsche, I think I will stay with the trusty McLaren 720S and try and start spending a little bit more time being more aggressive with the setup in search of lap time. I would like to come back to Le Mans in Season 2 and be only 2 seconds off the aliens rather than 4, but we'll see how that goes. How about you? How did your season go? Did you race the fixed series, the trophy series, the Le Mans endurance series, or did you jump into the multi-class series? How did your season go? Did you learn anything? Did you learn anything about yourself? Did you make any on-track friends, any on-track enemies? What car did you drive? Do you think you'll be driving the same car in Season 2, or will you make a change? I'm not sure if I'm going to do the fixed season in Season 2. I'm thinking I might swap it out and either do the Le Mans Endurance Series, although I'm not sold on that idea, or perhaps try the multi-class series. I didn't do it in Season 1 because I didn't want to spend a Monday and Thursday night racing. I don't really like racing on a school night, but since I did a lot of that in Season 1 anyway, I'm thinking since I drive in Le Mans Ultimate because I really like the multi-class experience and I want to experience that, I'm thinking I'm doing myself a disservice by not doing the multi-class series. Let me know, what do you think? If you're planning on doing it or you're already doing it, what are the pros? Give me your opinion. Should I jump in? Should I join you on track? Speaking of joining you on track, have we met on track? And if we did, was it a pleasant experience? Did you get the upper hand over me? Did I get the upper hand over you? Was it a fraught experience? Did I accidentally punt you off? I don't think I punted anybody off all season. I definitely shunted people, bumped into people, or perhaps clipped someone. I definitely clipped someone when they were in my blind spot, but I don't think I out and out punted anybody out of the race. Did you punt me out of the race? Did we trip over each other when someone else had an accident? Just tell me, what have your stories been of Season 1? And what do you plan to do in the off season? We get a week off, we get a break. Are you going to prepare for season 2, or are you going to pound out the laps in the daily and weekly series? Or will you jump into the special events? Basically, I just want to hear from you in the comments. How did you fare? Where did you finish in the championship standings? Did you bail on any series partway through, or did you see it through to the end? And if you're any of the drivers who finished in P1, P2 or P3, congratulations. Seriously, sincerely, I applaud you. Your pace is phenomenal. Your talent on track is outstanding. Maybe one day I'll get to within a second of you. It's highly unlikely, but until then, hopefully I don't cause you too many problems when you come to lap me. I'll see you in the next video. Every like, share, subscription is appreciated, but please do jump into the comments. I'll see you in the next one. Let's go.